Yes, sir. Live.
This is us, yeah.
Live.
All right, welcome to another Baylor SportsCare Roundtable. Today we've got Scott Fletcher and Jackie Porto, two of our athletic trainers, joining us. We're going to talk about a big subject in sports as far as injuries go, and that's concussion. It's a big topic and it's a complicated topic, but we're going to try to break it down, make it pretty simple here, give you some simple information for coaches and parents. Scott, let's start off with you and just give us some explanation of what is a concussion.
Well, in layman's term, a concussion, it's a type of mild traumatic brain injury. That seems to be the new catchphrase for concussions. So what it is a bruising of the brain, and just like any other type of bruising, you have all different types of severity. And if you compare it to a muscle when it's bruised, how it limits your function and it limits your strength and your range of motion, a bruising of your brain is going to limit the functions of the brain. So it's going to limit some of your thinking abilities, some of your balance abilities, and everything else concerned with the brain. So also with that, there's the mechanisms of injury for a concussion. You have direct contact, which is when maybe two football players hit head-to-head, or any other type of action where there's direct contact with your head. This can occur in a variety of ways. There's also a torsion injury. The most common thing that I can think of for that, to explain it, is when a boxer gets hit in the chin and it whips his head around. It actually causes the spinal cord to get a little bit of a twist, and your brain twists a little bit with that. So you get the torsion type thing that can cause a concussion. And then a contrecoup, which a common way to think of it is when someone lands on their back and their head whips back against the turf and the back of their head hits the turf, and it causes the brain that's inside of your head to whip back and forth. And the bruising is from the brain actually hitting the inside of the skull. So that kind of explains it. If you just remember it's a bruise, but when you think of a bruise, there's all different severities of bruises as well. So it can limit the actions and processes of the brain.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Scott. Yeah, I don't think people think a lot about that whiplash effect and some of those other mechanisms that we see a lot of the head-to-head. We recognize that, but we certainly don't think sometimes of the brain itself shifting inside the skull with some of those other injuries. So thanks a lot. We get a concussion, or we have a child we suspect has a concussion, or an athlete. Jackie, what are we looking for? What are signs and symptoms that tell us that we might have an athlete with a concussion?
Well, like Scott was saying, it basically affects your brain functioning. So there's a lot of different signs and symptoms that somebody could or could not experience. It really depends on the severity. It can even depend on your age. So younger people will be affected differently than the older people as far as their healing and recovery time. So basically, signs and symptoms can affect, it can be physically, mentally, and also it can affect your behavior. So typical signs and symptoms are headaches, nausea, vomiting, dizziness. They may complain of some blurred or double vision. You might notice one pupil larger than the other. They can be very confused, not remember a whole lot, which is why sometimes you'll hear healthcare professionals asking questions, what quarter are we in, what time is it, what's the score of the game, etc. So they might seem like they're just in a daze. And then on the behavior side, like I said, it can just basically be emotions out of proportion, whether it be irritability, nervousness, just mood changes altogether. So like I said, signs and symptoms are varying. Some people may experience only a headache. Some people may experience all 60 signs and symptoms. It's very different. Typically, they can occur within minutes to hours to days after the actual initial injury, and you can experience these signs and symptoms for days to weeks, sometimes even up to months after it. It just really depends on that severity. So it's, as far as the signs and symptoms, as far as treatment with that, basically you're just going to want to seek a healthcare professional immediately if you're suspecting a concussion. If you have the availability of an athletic trainer, they're the ones that are going to assess your child right there on the sidelines. But if you don't, you want to pull that kid out of the practice, make sure they're out the rest of the day, no more physical exertion for them, and try to find a physician able to assess that concussion. So it's basically not, it's not possible to predict the exact recovery time for a concussion because everyone is going to react differently.
Okay. And what about one of the things I think maybe a misconception is you have to lose consciousness to have a concussion? Is that true or not true?
I'm sorry?
Sorry, Jackie. I think a misconception is that the athlete has to lose consciousness to have a concussion. Is that true or not true?
It's not true, although loss of consciousness is a sign and symptom of a concussion. That's, like I said, there's varying severities, and so the loss of consciousness is probably a little bit more severe. It's definitely, if somebody loses consciousness, you want to send them to a medical professional, probably immediately, emergently. So okay. You may or may not experience that.
Okay. I want to make sure that people know just because they don't lose consciousness doesn't mean they don't have a concussion. So great. And obviously, yeah, it's better to be safe than sorry there. If you think somebody has a concussion showing some of these signs, get them out of the game, and as you said, seek medical advice. So Scott, we've done that. We know we've got somebody that has suffered a concussion. A big thing now, too, that we're all concerned about is return to play and how long it takes and what are the steps and all those things. So give us a little background on what are some return to play protocols.
Sure. A lot of times what we worry about with too quick of a return to play is a phenomenon called second impact syndrome. And what happens there is if you return someone too soon, they're going to be 4 to 6 times more likely to sustain that second concussion, especially within the first 7 to 10 days of the first concussion. They're a lot more susceptible. So a little patience early on will provide great benefits later. And also with concussions, the effects are cumulative. So you worry that you're not, the second time that you have a concussion, it may take less of an impact in order to get the same symptoms and even worse, because those they tend to just build and build and build. So that's a concern. You want to be aware that second impact syndrome is there and that it is real, and it's something that you need to be concerned with. As far as your return to play, hopefully in your sporting endeavors, you're able to search out and find an impact certified physician that can give you baseline testing. It is a test where you go in and they put you on a computer and do some tests, and then they keep those results. And so after you sustain a concussion, your return to play protocol, you're going to start by going back to that physician. Again, an impact certified physician is what we recommend, and they can then pull up your baseline test and see how your brain functioned in a healthy state, and then they'll test you again and see how you react to under your current condition, and they can judge the severity at that point. Return to play protocol. There's the UIL protocol, there's NCAA, there's all different types of protocols for this, but the standard of care is going to be cleared by the physician, obviously, first. So you go in and have your testing done, get cleared by the physician. You're going to be symptom-free, and then the athletic trainer can take it from there once the physician has cleared them. Day one, there's light exercise, 10 to 15 minutes maybe on a stationary bike or light jogging, some way where you can be supervised. Day 2, and by the way, if any symptoms return during that time, you stop immediately and you start the next day with phase 1 again. Day 2, if everything goes good and symptoms stay away, you can do moderate exercise for 10 or 15 minutes, maybe pick up the pace with jogging, some light plyo boxes, some running drills, agility stuff, and again, without symptoms. Day 3, non-contact sports workouts are permissible, again, under supervision. And again, if the symptoms return, you shut down. And at that point, even if you're at day 3, you return back to square one. You go back to having to get symptom-free and then start from there. And then day 4, if you're still symptom-free, you can return to play. I'd recommend you start with light contact, and then you slowly increase from there.
Okay. Well, again, good information from you guys. We know concussion is a bruising of the brain. There are a few different ways it can be caused. Certainly there are multiple signs and symptoms, and as Jackie said, they may vary by severity and by the individual. But if you think you've got an athlete or a child with a concussion, make sure they sit out and you seek medical advice. And then that return to play strategy, we also want to make sure that's in conjunction with healthcare professional and the protocols of your league, and that you return to play safely if we want to get you back out there, obviously as soon as possible, but safely. Thank you guys for the information today. There's a lot of other good information out there about concussions. We encourage you to visit baylorhealth.com/sportscare for some information on concussions, and if you are looking for a physician who may specialize in concussions, we can help you find one. Also, the CDC has a good concussion website with their Heads Up Concussion program. I recommend you checking out as well. Again, thanks again for participating in this Baylor SportsCare Roundtable on concussions. Thanks, Jackie. Thanks, Scott.